Hello, we are the remote controllers, and this is our milestone 4. For our overview of the problem, our problem that we came up with is when students and workers meet up remotely, it is very common for the people to start talking over each other, which may cause problems such as confusion, disruption of the conversation flow. For our overview of the problem, our theme relevance was that in classrooms or workspaces, people will usually use a gesture such as raising a hand in order to signal that they have something to say without interrupting. However, in a remote setting, the ability to signal that physical gesture is removed. Due to the pandemic, our group of potential users is much larger than before. As the example provided, Zoom reports surpassing 300 million daily meeting participants in April. That will include those who typically do not have meeting virtual before 2020. Our proposed solution uh, involves that there is a button at the bottom of the Zoom called focus mode, and that meeting host can activate it. When it's activated, everyone is muted, and it brings up a pop-up window that has the action buttons and shows a queue of everyone in the line to speak. Everyone in the queue is numbered, one at the top, two underneath, and etc. When you are muted and not in the queue, there is one button that says speak, which puts you in the queue to speak. And when you're in the queue, there's a button to remove from queue that you can click if you do not want to speak anymore. Continuing, when it is your turn to speak, there is a sound, a pop-up, or another indicator to let you know that it is your turn to speak in case that you are distracted and not looking at the call. You are automatically unmuted and there's a button that says finish speaking that is available for you to press when your turn is over. You are then muted and the next person in the queue is unmuted. Chat box is still available if you need to make a comment without interrupting the current speaker. Meeting host also has the ability to end someone's turn if they forget to hit the finish speaking button, or if someone is away when the turn to speak is coming up so the meeting does not get stuck at that current situation.
So for our ideation phase, once we came up with our proposed solution, we decided on a list of major design features that we wanted to make sure were well thought out and present when we started brainstorming and crafting our initial wireframes. We divided these features by the agent, so there are features for the host, such as a toggle to enable and disable focus mode, as well as the ability to remove users from the queue easily. There are features for the participants, such as not being able to unmute their mic when focus mode is activated, and there's also features for both, such as joining and leaving the queue, as well as viewing the queue list. So we all worked together to make 4 different wireframes for our proposed solution based on the relevant user stories we formulated in Milestone 3 and the list of design features from the last slide. Each one hit the major functionalities that we wanted to implement, but in slightly different ways. We ended up selecting wireframe 1 to move forward with for a variety of reasons. It allows easy access to both focus mode and the chat in the side panel. It gives a clear signifier for the meeting host to end a speaker's turn. It clearly notifies a user when the turn is approaching, when the turn to speak is approaching, has a clear signifier to the meeting host for how to enable and disable focus mode, clearly shows the order of the queue, and easily integrates with Zoom's current interface. So this is the detailed design that we created in Milestone 3 from the wireframes that we just showed. One change from the wireframes to this mockup is that we got rid of the numbers next to the names of participants in the queue because they were redundant. We also had some minor changes in the arrangement of the queue and as well as some of the buttons. Again, this mockup had all of the design features that we formulated together in a way that can be easily incorporated with Zoom's current UI. So here's our final high fidelity prototype that we created based on the wireframe and justifications that were just shown. So right now we're seeing the host view, where the host can click focus mode in the bottom bar in order to enable it. The focus mode queue will show up in the right panel, and the host can remove people who are currently in the queue. The host can then both add and remove themselves from the queue, as well as end the turn of whoever is speaking. At the bottom, again, the host can turn the focus mode off. Moving on to participant view, While in focus mode, a participant can leave and join the queue at will. Now to show what it looks like when your turn is approaching. There will be a pop-up indicator that counts down and shows you when your mic would be unmuted. So 3, 2, 1, and now it would be this user's turn to speak.
Next up, we thought about our testing protocol and worked to develop an appropriate strategy of actually testing the performance of our focus mode design. So our research question that we wanted to answer was, does using focus mode reduce the amount of meeting interruptions and instances of people talking over each other and make the discussion flow more efficiently? In order to test this, we implemented a mixed methodology testing protocol involving observation, survey, and experiments. For our methodology, with the observation, we intended to simply watch a recording of randomly selected meetings to see how participants are using focus mode and whether it's working as we expect. We would compare these meetings to ones where participants don't use focus mode to see its relative effectiveness. And in order to do this, we intended to count where interruptions occurred with focus mode compared to control samples. For our survey data, we intended to collect a survey at the end of meetings that implemented focus mode. So this would be from beta testers or other users of the focus mode system, and they'd be randomly deployed and optional surveys. They're valuable because they tell a narrative and story of how users actually find their experience compared to the quantitative measure of counting the number of mistakes that are made in focus mode versus without focus mode. Finally, we thought that experiments would be helpful in order to develop a controlled environment to account for the value of focus mode in reducing user interruptions. So in our experiment, we would have multiple groups engage in video meetings utilizing focus mode, and then other groups utilizing not Zoom without focus mode. And we would compare the productivity from both of these groups to visualize if there's a difference. This productivity would be measured through time taken in addition to number of interactions. The testing procedure, similar to the methodology, involves a few more steps. So for the survey and observation procedures, we would employ a pop-up after meetings end in order to ask if the user is willing to either participate in the survey or in the observational study. For the survey, the user has to then complete the survey and submit it. But for the observation, simply granting us permission to use the recording is enough, and that is the end of user involvement with the observation study. The experiment is a bit more intensive in what the user has to do because we will recruit random research participants from as diverse of a pool as possible for an experimental study in which they participate as members of an English-speaking working discussion group. The experiment would involve a researcher working as a moderator of the research participant group and about 10 such groups. Then the moderator asks questions, which we then record and count the number of interruptions and the overall productivity of each meeting.
Now I'm going to explain how we decided to handle informed consent. So for the post-meeting survey, there would be a pop-up asking if the user is willing to participate in the survey. And if so, they would be provided a link that takes them to a privacy policy so they have full disclosure on how their data would be handled. And for the meeting observation, the pop-up would provide a link to a privacy policy that fully outlines how their data would be handled. If the meeting host allows the meeting to be recorded, participants will receive a pop-up alerting them that this meeting will be recorded for testing purposes. At this point, they can view the privacy policy and stay in the meeting, or they may choose to leave. And for our experiment, we will apply for IRB approval and practice beneficence, justice, and respect for beings. Recruited research participants will be fully protected under these principles, and they will receive a nominal compensation for their time. They will be told what they're testing. They will be told that they are testing out a new video software improvement by participating in a group discussion via our video meeting platform. And this is how we would handle data collection and organization. So we would collect the answers given in the post-meeting survey, and we would organize it by grouping together the answers from each question. We would also take steps to anonymize any potentially identifiable data. And for the meeting recording, we would collect recordings of meetings and we would organize it by meeting size so we could see how different numbers of people affect focus mode. And based on the questions that were asked, the meetings are collected and organized based on the time of the meeting. One section for focus mode off or one section for focus mode on and then one that is off. And to analyze our data, we would first look through the survey answers and see if we received any positive or negative feedback. And we would then look at features of focus mode that received negative feedback, and we would consider making some changes to focus mode. And we would also consider any specific suggestions given by survey participants. And then next, we would also watch recordings of meetings and analyze the flow of the conversation and see if there are any confusing UI elements that made it hard for users to use focus mode.
For the safety of everyone because of COVID-19, the testing procedures will be safely conducted because there will be no physical contact. Meeting recordings will be held online. Surveys will be held online, and any questions in regards to the applications will be answered via online. And what we learned throughout this term project includes learning how to use a new software such as Adobe XD to create a low to high fidelity model so the team or client can visualize what the product will look like. We learned how to work efficiently as a team. We learned how to design a testing protocol efficiently. We learned the difference between the wireframe and mock-up prototype and how to create each of them. We learned how to apply all the Belmont applications throughout our testing protocol. Learned and considered all the golden rules, principles, theories, and the 7 stages of action. And finally, we learned parts of the Norman's theory, which includes the 3 levels of processing, including visceral, behavioral, and reflective. And these are our end credits, and thank you for watching.